What's going on, guys? This is another episode of People Management Digest. My name is Lucas Pesa. Today, I will be speaking to Manu Varma. He is the VP of Human Resources at Traction on Demand, and the conversation that we'll be having today is about a policy of non-policy. And what that means is essentially how organizations can create a culture or a environment that allows employees themselves to take more accountability and more onus of their deliverables and of their work environments and ultimately of their own accountability. So make sure you stick around for the entire episode. Manu's got some really great insights on everything pertaining to the nuances about this conversation, whether it's the importance of EQ, how companies can empower and make employees more accountable and remove barriers, but also while allowing employees to take onus of their own work environments as well. So this whole culture of flexibility idea that Manu and I are going to talk about, there's a lot of really interesting insights that we sort of touch on throughout the course of the conversation. So make sure you stick around for the whole thing. This is my interview with Manu Varma, and enjoy. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of People Management Digest. I'm here today with Manu Varma of Traction on Demand. Manu, how you doing?
I'm good, Lucas. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for jumping on the interview with us. I'm looking forward to this one.
My pleasure. Thanks. Always a pleasure to be able to talk to you guys.
Absolutely. So essentially what we'll be talking about today in prep for the, obviously you're speaking at our conference in April. So the conversation that we're going to have today is about the subject matter that you guys on your panel will be speaking to, which is the policy of non-policy. And one of the sort of intro things that I want to discuss with you, because obviously as we move forward in the conversation, what we'll discuss is exactly what the policy of non-policy is, what it means to streamline your people management practices. But before we even get into that, I just sort of want to lay a bit of a foundation to the conversation, and that's by asking, what are the sort of circumstances that typically hinder innovation among employees in your estimation?
Yeah, great question. I think, first of all, just the lack of trust that sometimes companies have in their people, I think that really is a big threat to innovation. And I think that really leads into kind of the second reason I think that innovation is hindered is that there isn't this freedom to fail. There's so much of a fear-based culture in so many companies that people are really reluctant to try something new, to maybe step out of their box and try something that might be a little bit risky for fear of reprisals and retribution. I think what's really important that companies need to do more of is really be able to foster that sense of giving those employees like a sense of a limitless horizon, to really treat them like an owner of their own business, which is their own job, and to provide them with that sense of insurgency for their role, for the industry, for maybe a task or even a project that really helps them grow. And the byproduct, obviously, is innovation for the company. And then the kind of enforcement of rules. And I think back to Nortel, one of those Canadian success stories that kind of took a big nosedive, right? And I remember reading an article about how innovative Nortel used to be, and then they slapped on this dress code policy. And that something as simple as putting rules around what people have to wear to work can really have an adverse effect on what the net output is in terms of innovation. And it's pretty shocking to me that some basic stuff, I talk about trust, I talk about failing fast and really pushing that forward in terms of values, and too many policies just really stymie people's innovation and creativity. So that's kind of my take.
Well, and that's an interesting point you bring up. I mean, obviously, from a management standpoint, in my experience, managers will always, every boss has a boss, so to speak. So I find that, even the managers who maybe are implementing certain strategies to, whether it's a dress code or what have you, there is a certain goal in mind. But I mean, one thing I just wanted to build on, what do you think what is it that companies fear when it comes to allowing, a little bit more flexibility when it comes to those components of a workplace?
Yeah, It's a great question. I think there's a fear of the unknown, but I think it just goes back to, I guess, people's experiences, the lack of control.
Sure.
I mean, I've worked in places where it is very much that kind of protectionist. So in terms of their intellectual property or things that people put together or things that they've invented. And that fear just permeates. For me, it's just about fear.
Yeah.
And we're trusting people in often cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in the business.
Yeah.
You trust them enough to hire them. So why not give them the bandwidth to kind of make their own judgments?
For sure, yeah. No, I definitely see that, and I've researched a few organizations where their approach to this kind of thing is in no uncertain terms. We've hired somebody to do a job, so we might as well sort of be there to support and provide that, but essentially allow them to do what they've been hired to do, which I think allows employees a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and just to build on that too, I often think I learned long ago that always hire people that are smarter than better than you that are working with you.
Exactly.
So why wouldn't I want to have people that are taking risks and doing great things? And ultimately, that only bequeaths you as a manager to look at, hey, look at this person on my team. Look at the great things that you've done under your leadership. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, it's interesting you discussed that a little bit, because one of the things that organizations that I've seen, one thing that's always that they're trying to balance is exactly how much sort of direction and I guess control is necessary in order to drive projects forward and continue on the course of business, but also giving employees the opportunity to have that flexibility. So how, in your estimation, how can managers sort of gauge how much quote unquote control is best in order to get the best results from their employees?
Yeah, it's interesting using the word control.
Yeah.
That kind of gets my back up a little bit. And I think when you talk about gauging, I would kind of going back to that whole that concept of situational leadership, right? So based on people's aptitude, based on what they've demonstrated, what they can do in the past, and to provide the amount of support. So I think I would rather substitute in the word support for control. Because ultimately people are different, and if it's a new job, maybe they require a bit more support. But I think freedom's great. I think by providing the end goal really helps with alignment, but then also having the peace of mind of knowing, okay, well, I provided the end goal. Let's let them figure out a way to get there themselves. And just that's empowering them to get the best results. I mean, everybody wants. I've met very few people in my life that don't want to do a good job.
Yeah.
Right? And then they want to figure out their own path and not being given piecemeal things. They want to see how they can contribute in totality, even though they may not be actually contributing to the whole cycle, for example. But having an understanding of what it might look like start to finish helps them do better. So if they know what the end result is and they are given tools, barriers are taken away from them, they can do a way better job. And at Traction, we've done something a little bit unique. I mean, we're a consulting firm. So, one of the things that we've hated most about being consulting is this whole concept of billable hours.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, based on GAAP revenue, there's really no way to get around it. So we kind of were scratching our heads as like, how can we leverage this billable hours and get some insight from our people, what they enjoy doing the most? And by getting this kind of sentiment analysis, we can better support them to get their better results. So what our employees are doing on a daily basis is when they're billing their time back to their project work, we're asking them to provide some sentiment attached to it either as well. So the kind of four categories are syndication, execution, administration, and learning. So say, for example, I was working on a Traction project and I spent 4 hours in syndication, and then I marked my time as amazing. So then we kind of look at that data the next day and say, in an aggregate, and say, hey, Bobby, did you know that every time you syndicate in a project, you're always marking your time as amazing? So why don't we give you more work that enables you to syndicate yourself? Or conversely, we kind of look at that data over a quarter, and I'll say, hey, Bobby, did you notice that every time you were in full execution mode, you marked your time as pretty brutal? What happened, right? So we're actually showing from an employer standpoint that we're concerned about what their day-over-day lives are looking like.
Right.
giving them some, I guess, let's use control here in terms of what types of work they can work on or want to work on, and not just giving them work that they're good at. So they can have some control in terms of, hey, just because I'm good at something doesn't mean I'm going to enjoy working on it day over day. So maybe even a brutal mark would be, hey, it was brutal, but hey, I enjoyed it because I learned something new.
Yeah.
So it doesn't substitute the conversation, but ultimately it kind of puts the employee back in the driver's seat and shows them that, hey, we're on this journey together and we're using data to do it as well.
Well, it's interesting because I'm not as familiar with the concept of being able to sort of classify your hours as brutal or awesome. I'm curious, like what does that actually look like from your standpoint? Do employees actually, after they've filled in how much time they spent on a particular job or working on a particular client, do they sort of bill? Does that mean that they specify whether or not their time, whether it was not necessarily productive, but if they learned something or if there was something that they felt they could have done better? So how does that nuance work?
Yeah, so those kind of four categories I talked about: syndication, learning, execution, and admin, and then they attach one of four sentiments to it. Is it amazing? Was it pretty good? Was it okay, or was it brutal?
Yeah.
And just, again, it's nothing that's used for kind of punitive or salary-focused stuff.
Yep.
It's really designed to build roles around people so they can work on clients, project work, or activities that they either want to learn on or really enjoy working at.
Yeah, 100%. So in a sense, I mean, there's a little bit of, I don't want to say control, but there's a little bit of, I guess, flexibility that the reason that these sorts of practices work is because it can sort of narrow down the specific nuances that allow someone to realize what they enjoy, where they can improve, and moving forward, how it can sort of enable them in their careers. One question I wanted to ask you to sort of take it as another step is, and we see this all the time in the educational field as well, whether it's in, a lot of technical colleges that are now being sort of born into the market, or even in certain cases at the high school or younger level. Between a lot of the digital resources that are available and between a lot of the, I guess, ways in which people can absorb information, there's a sort of trend that I'm seeing, at least, and maybe you see it a little differently, where the individual is sort of given more opportunity to govern their own, I guess, learning and development, so to speak. So I guess as it pertains to the workforce, one of the sorts of trends that is related is referring to how much of the learning and development process is in the hands of the manager and how much of it is the sort of responsibility of the learner. So from your standpoint and based on your experience, how much would you say managers are responsible for creating engagement in work, not necessarily pertaining to learning, but how much are managers responsible for creating engagement, and how much responsibility inherently should be placed on the employee to actually create, whether it's engagement or whether it's innovation or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, it's a definite interesting one because there's always a debate about it, right? So I think for us specifically, there's definitely a spirit of entrepreneurialism and attraction. So it's definitely a balance between us. I think companies and management definitely do have some onus of responsibility in terms of being able to paint a picture of what possibilities could be. And for us, that's exactly what we've done. So we've kind of created two leadership paths. One is kind of that traditional, I'm going to manage people and go and move up that way. Mm-hmm. But then we've also kind of mirrored a kind of more expert or technical path where people can kind of progress up that way, all both mirroring benefits and salary and reputation-wise, whether you choose to be a people manager or just a technical expert. How people get there, there's a lot of different ways. But what we've tried to do is paint a picture forward of what that could potentially look like in the spirit of looking at each person as individuals. And I think how we get there, we've just really tried to make people better versions of themselves by really focusing on EQ. We want to make sure that people know that they have a choice. So they have a choice to come to work every day, and we kind of picture a visual like a line in the sand at our front door. Well, we each have a choice to come to work every day where we step across that that line in the sand to do something that we want to be doing and learning on. So it's definitely, I think it's a shared responsibility. But I think for us specifically, there's definitely more than entrepreneurialism. It's like, hey, there's lots available. You can't wait for it to be handed to you.
Yep.
Go up there and be verbal and make your intentions known of what you want to do or where you want to go to. We want to be able to facilitate that. Hopefully there's learning within the company. There's external learning that you need to or want to get. Let's look at that on a one-by-one basis. But I don't think it rests solely in the responsibility of the company other than to remove barriers. And the manager should be removing those barriers, looking for opportunities to stretch people. But I think the employee also has to take some onus and just saying, hey, this is where I want to go, and can't just be a passenger on the ride. They definitely have to be. I think it's a partnership.
Absolutely, yeah. And just to sort of build on it, and this is kind of the last component that I wanted to ask you about, because, between all of the, conversation topics pertaining to, workplace flexibility in the learning process and the management process, one thing that I think a lot of managers would be curious to learn about is there a sort of noticeable ROI when employers allow accountability and flexibility to their employees to sort of manage their own work experiences? Is there a sort of noticeable ROI in that regard?
Oh my God, totally. I mean, I think the first one is so boring to talk about because I hate talking about basic HR metrics, but obviously attrition rates, that has a direct impact on if I'm happy, I'm treated as an adult, I have the flexibility, I'm probably not gonna leave the organization. So, and related, I'm probably going to refer more people into the company if I'm enjoying my work and I'm having some self-determination around it. I've got the flexibility. I'm going to refer more people in. And that's been one of our biggest drivers in terms of growth metrics, is that 54% of our employees that work with us have been referred by existing employees. So I think that's a clear measure of ROI, because we all know how expensive it is to onboard people. We know how expensive it is to lose people.
Yep.
So I think that's definitely one piece around it. And I think we haven't really gone the traditional job description route. We've gone more the route of kind of job profiles. Just because the last thing we want to have is just this whole butt in the chair mentality. Because we all know because your butt's in your chair, you're going to be productive.
Exactly.
It's just a back way of operating. But I think we all know that kind of human capital goodwill. And I think we're very big supporters of that. Is we recognize that in different points of our lives, different points of the year, different ages, we're going to have different stresses on our life and different priorities. And so being able to work around that is critical to ensure the longevity of the business. And ultimately, we don't want people here for just a job. We want them with us for a lifetime. And we really think that we're trying to build a community and not just a company. And so by giving people that flexibility and treating them as adults, they step up and are accountable and really treat their jobs like it's their own business. And man, how do you measure that? I don't know, but there's definitely a financial component there.
Yep. No, I agree 100%. Well, Manu, that's actually all the questions that I had. Luckily, though, you're going to be joining us at a later point so that we can build on this idea a little bit more. Obviously, today we talked a little bit about the sort of source and a lot of the sort of background and contextual information around workplace flexibility and allowing accountability to employees and all of those sorts of trends. Moving into our next chat, which I'm looking forward to in a little while, we're going to be discussing the actual strategic policy of non-policy, so to speak, because obviously that's something you'll be speaking to at our conference on April 25th. So I'm looking forward to our next chat. Make sure you guys give Traction on Demand a follow on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can always check out their website at tractionondemand.com. And if you want to check out Great Place to Work, you can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and obviously you can check us out at greatplacetowork.ca. We're looking forward to our conference coming up April 25th, and obviously Manu will be on a panel discussion where we'll be talking about all these sorts of trends, flexibility in the workforce, a sort of policy of accountability and the benefits and implementation implementation strategies of how all that can come together. So we're really looking forward to that. And until next time, Manu, we appreciate you jumping on the interview with us, and hopefully this was a good chance for you to get some of these ideas out there.
Yeah, thanks. My pleasure. Thanks for the invite.